fairly full agenda today, and we'll try and get through it in an efficient manner. Before we move on to formal business, I want to make a statement in relation to the Gracefield Arts Centre. Since the Policy and Resources Committee meeting on the 25th of February, some very inaccurate reporting and commentary, both in the local and social media, suggesting that Gracefield Arts Centre is about to close. This has caused some understandable anxiety among staff and users groups. And the Director and I will be writing to both staff and the users groups to clarify the position. And I'd just like to emphasise that no decision has been made to close Gracefield. The report on the Dumfries Asset Plan included a recommendation that an options appraisal be carried out on the relocation of the services and facilities provided at Gracefield. And as we all know, that was part of a wider strategy aimed at reducing the number and cost of buildings held by the Council in Dumfries. Equally clearly, the recommendation implies that further work is required to identify a potential alternative location for those services and facilities. No decision has been made on closure or indeed disposal of the site. And I want to publicly reassure staff, facility users and the public that the further options appraisal process will include, as an early and central stage, significant consultation with all stakeholders in those services and facilities. And I hope this, for both the printed media and the social media, clarifies the position with regard to Gracefield. I just get a wee bit sick personally of some of the innuendo that appears in these areas. Anyway, moving on. Sederunt and apologies.
Good morning. We have 17 members present, and I have apologies from Councillor Scobie and Councillor Nicholl and Councillor Tate. Councillor McGregor is not present, but may be along later in the meeting.
Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest?
Thank you, Convener. On item number 5, I will leave the meeting and do not take part in the debate and voting on this item due to my position on the Dumfries and Galloway Multicultural Association as chairwoman. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3 is a minute of the meeting of 15th December 2015. So move. Thank you. Item 4, Dumfries and Galloway Health and Wellbeing, Resourcing, Performance and Integration. Please welcome Michelle McCoy, who's here to present the DG Health and Wellbeing report. Before we hear from Michelle, I would ask Stuart Hamilton to present his covering report, which provides members with an overview of the Health and Wellbeing Unit, which is an important role of improving the health and wellbeing of our population. Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that DG Health and Wellbeing is a joint unit established by Dumfries and Galloway Council and NHS Dumfries and Galloway to provide the strategic leadership to reduce inequalities and improve the health and wellbeing of the population across the region. This report from the joint unit outlines the priorities identified in the Public Health Directorate's new strategic framework and provides details on an outcomes-focused framework which highlights the short, medium and long-term outcomes that the joint unit is aligning its work streams to. Appendix 2 and 3 of the report outlines the key performance information and performance and outcome areas for DG Health and Wellbeing, and elected members are requested to scrutinise this information. The Interim Director of Public Health, Michelle McCoy, is happy to discuss the content of the report, and we're happy to answer any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Michelle, anything you want to add?
I'm happy to take questions.
I'll open up to members. Questions?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's about the details at 3.12 in the report and also 313. It says that there's 7 health and wellbeing specialists and a health and wellbeing officer. Can an explanation of what these staff actually do, where they work from, and can also be clarified for me where the budget for the local health improvement teams is sourced? As regard the 313, the report says that the total budget is 1.38 million and the council contribution is 448,600. We considered a report last Monday that said the total budget for this was 2.086 million and 456k come for the council. Can the difference be explained for me?
Thank you, Chair. Michelle will answer the questions in terms of the health and wellbeing specialists, the roles and where they're employed. In terms of the budget contribution from Dumfries and Galloway Council, the budget contribution for the financial year that we're currently in is 448,680 in its entirety, and that includes the funding for the 2 officers employed by Dumfries and Galloway Council. And obviously a budget decision was taken last Monday with regards to that budget. In terms of the total budget, that information for this report and the budget saving proposal came from NHS Dumfries and Galloway, and I'll clarify that total budget and get that information to elected members. I'm not sure why there is a discrepancy there, but I'll clarify that and get a note out to members as soon as I can.
Yes, in regard to the specialists and the health improvement officers, the joint unit brought together staff who were working within the NHS and the local authority. So they're all health and wellbeing specialists with public health expertise working on different programs. So each has got a responsibility for a program of activity that fits underneath the long-term outcomes that we've identified. So with each of those team members have responsibility for programs that link to improving mental health and well-being and physical health and well-being. And within physical health and well-being, we've identified the importance of physical activity and food and health and individual and community resilience.
Yeah. Where do they work from, and the clarification and where the budget for the local health improvement teams come from?
The strategic unit is where there's budget both from the NHS and the local authority council, and the locality health improvement teams are NHS funded posts. And they specifically they work within each of the areas across Dumfries and Galloway.
I take it that's the health improvement team.
Yes.
The specialists that are working on the specific programs and are strategic. Where are they actually based?
They are actually based within the Directorate of Public Health within the Crichton. So that's where the strategic function is, and the tactical and operational function is out in each of the 4 local areas. And what we do is that the aim is to take a region-wide approach, but also address local need as identified in local areas. And so there's a link between the programs of work at a strategic level and in the localities.
Thank you. Councillor Maitland.
Thank you. It's a very specific, detailed question, actually. It's about, on page 31, it's concerning the issue of Cycling Scotland. I know from my own ward that we spent a very long time when the police withdrew from cycling proficiency, persuading parents to take up this mantle. And eventually, after about 2 or 3 years of having nobody doing cycling proficiency, eventually they did. I'm just sort of wondering what is planned here. I mean, the whole drive is to ask communities to take up the cudgel with respect to providing services for themselves. And I just am very loath to see that there is to be a schools officer to increase the number of school pupils taking cycling proficiency. I just would hate to unpick work which really took quite a long time to get sorted out. So I wonder if I could just have an assurance that this is rather more an overview than an actual doing.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the grant awarded from Cycling Scotland, the Council has received £20,000 in terms of funding to increase the uptake of Bikeability 2 training, which is the former cycling proficiency test that was provided to school pupils. The old cycling proficiency and Bikeability 2 is a non-statutory function of the Council, and it has rested with a number of different departments across the whole of the Council in terms of who was responsible. Following a meeting between Community and Customer Services colleagues and other colleagues from across various directorates and external parties, we have submitted a bid to Cycling Scotland in an effort to try and gain some budget to increase the participation levels and provide some training to expand that programme, because the uptake of Bikeability 2 has decreased in previous years from where we previously were, one of the highest in Scotland. We are now just below the national average in terms of uptake. And Cycling Scotland have recognised that and provided £20,000 to the council for this financial year and going into the following financial year to provide some support to provide further training, but it doesn't override the work that's already been undertaken in schools already to support other schools that require training for Bikeability 2 officers to be developed.
So can I come back? Is this training of parents, or is it actual delivering of a service?
This will be for training parents and volunteers in schools across the region that don't currently participate in Bikeability 2.
Okay,
Thanks very much, Chair. And with my other hat on, and Michelle's got the same hat on in the NHS for the armed forces side of things, I see a lot of things within this particular Appendix 3 that has a cross, issue with veterans, for instance. But I don't see anything specifically for veterans in this particular area. I would imagine that each of these specific instances of projects will include veterans in that.
Sorry, apologies. Yes, absolutely. In terms of us working on improving health and well-being and reducing health inequalities means that we target activity to particular population groups and where there's additional vulnerability. So yes, veterans would be included within those groupings.
That's it.
Thank you. I'm looking at the first one on page 15 in the report there, which is to do with the long-term condition programme, which seems to have a good uptake, and then it stopped. And I just wondered if that was all that was going to happen, or whether there was a different programme that was dealing with this, or whether it's not deemed to be necessary anymore, which I would find a bit strange.
With that particular programme, there was short-term funding, and that funding ceased, so it had to end. But what we do have is we've got other programmes where we seek to work with individuals to support them in improving their health outcomes. And one of those would be the Keep Well programme.
Councillor Yen.
Thank you. On page 19, number of employers having policies which support and recognize the needs of carers. And your target is 5. At the moment, you completed 2. Could you explain who are the other employers you're working on?
Some of the detail of that I will have to get back to you with, but what we're wanting is that organisations take on a Carers Positive Award scheme, and certainly the NHS, we're working to that as one of.
Anybody else? Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I just got the impression when Stuart spoke earlier that cycling, as it were, hadn't found a home, a department or an outside organisation that had taken total ownership. If that's correct, has anything been done to nail that one down, to give cycling more of a profile and to carry forward the initiatives and hopefully get us back to the top of the tree insofar as activity and participation is concerned in the near future?
Thank you. Yes, the has found a home. The Service Manager for Leisure and Sport has coordinated a team, and I'm part of that team to ensure that the delivery of Bikeability 2 is provided, and we start to see the levels of participation increase again. So it sits within the Leisure and Sport Service within the council.
Sorry. Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to come back, I know we do have partners. We've got Swestrans, for example, who has been involved in the past in infrastructure projects to enable cycling, and other organisations as well as representatives of Sustrans. in our region. I wonder at what thought or consideration may have been put to bringing those interested parties together to drive cycling forward, not least given the interest being shown in our region by the Tour of Scotland, Tour of Britain, sorry, and how we can maintain a high profile for cycling in our region. It's important economically from a tourism standpoint and from a wide economic base.
Thank you. Yes, a wide range of partners were involved in initial discussions and will continue to be involved in the delivery and support of bikeability through Swestrans, but also Sustrans with the iBike officer that's employed through that charity. The work that that officer provides supports the work of the volunteers in the schools, and that will continue. But in terms of raising the profile of cycling in terms of tourism, that is perhaps a link that we have missed, and that's something I'll raise in the next meeting, ensure that Ian Barr, the Principal Events Officer, is involved in the discussions about how we promote cycling, both locally and regionally.
Councillor McClung.
Yeah, thanks for letting me back in, Chair. And I'm grateful for the information about the sourcing of the budget for the health improvement teams. I'll be parochial here for a minute. I have information, rumour, that the budget and the hours of the staff and the health improvement team in Wigtonshire, as of the beginning of April, are going to be cut. Now, I fully understand that money's tight and money's tight everywhere, but my concern is that we're actually, if that rumour is true, that we are going to be cutting the local services, which means the actual ones on the ground, yet we are still paying for 7 staff in Dumfries, we being the area. I know it's NHS funding, but the 7 strategic leads will still be in Dumfries, yet the local staff that are there to actually provide the service on the ground are going to be cut if the rumour is true. I would just like to know, is it true?
I'm not aware of the rumour. All I can offer to do is to seek to find out where what the thinking is. Sorry, I don't know whether it's because I'm just back from annual leave or that it's not. But I can certainly seek to understand what the foundations are.
I would be obliged for the clarification. Thanks very much, Chair.
I'll just refer it back to what I said at the start of the meeting about Gracefield issue. Same kind of thing. Folk just start all these stories and you never know whether they're true or not. And not until we see them in black and white and from the official source, you know they are. Any further points on the report? Archie.
Thanks, Chair. I attended a meeting last Friday along with Councillor Thompson and Sonis and Annan about logic modelling. And the whole idea is to try and bring forward the not a single outcome agreement, so like whatever it's called nowadays, and putting that information into the locality plans. Now, this is obviously a region-based project. How important is that going to be to the locality plans? Understanding the questions it was asked about, for instance, cycling in Annandale and Estill is extremely large. There are good community groups here who own that particular thing and drive that forward. So how important is that logic modelling within the locality plans in correlation with this particular project?
When you ask it specifically in relation to this project, are you referring to what we have here?
It's mainly to do with the locality plans. How important is this, and what sort of leeway are you going to be given the locality plans to ensure that this is implemented across the board, different areas?
You'll see from Appendix 1 of the report what we've identified there are our long-term, medium-term and short-term outcomes, which is exactly as you've described. That's the logic modelling. That's been developed with the strategic unit, and then when I was referring earlier to there being locality plans, those two things should link, but the locality plans very much seek to meet the needs of the population locally. But what we want to make sure is that there's also resource across all the piece, so we target that as appropriate and work with partners.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Drybrave for reminding me about the meeting we attended on Friday, because it was interesting, and I think what I found when reading this report was obviously there has to be a bit of clarity strategically in terms of what's a priority, what's an outcome, what's a target, what's an action, etc., and how that cascades, if you like, from strategic leadership down to those maybe delivering or tactical sort of units that are actually delivering things on the ground. Do you think that that clarity is coming from the top down to the organisation so that they know actually we're delivering an activity to achieve a short-term outcome that meets a priority? Is there a bit of confusion there that still needs to be ironed out in terms of what an outcome, a target, an aim, an objective, a priority might be, and who's meant to be taking the lead on delivering each of those?
Thank you. There's always debate about different words and the use of them. And what I would say is that it's important to identify what the long-term, medium-term, short-term outcomes are, and behind that there are individual action plans for people who are taking forward individual programs, but then there's also the locality plans, and we continue to work and refine those to make them as specific as we can do, so that it becomes clear as to what the activity is and what the output from that activity is in terms of making a contribution to health, improving health and well-being.
Anybody else? No. Move on to recommendations. Note 2.1, Note 2.2. I think we've reviewed under Appendix 1, scrutinised Appendix 2, scrutinised Appendix 3. Very much. Move on to Item 5, Community Planning. Well, thanks very much, Michelle. Thanks very much, Stuart. Move on to Item 5, Community Planning and Engagement. Members will no doubt acknowledge that the issues addressed within this report are fundamental to the change programme the Council has previously agreed. The Council is committed to being an inclusive council with local people at the heart of our decision making. We are also fully behind the need to empower communities to make the most of their local assets, and this is reflected in the Community Facilities Review update later on in the agenda. We also need to work with our community planning partners to address the issues of inequality, poverty, and protecting the most vulnerable people in our communities. And I'm sure members want to fully explore these when considering the report. Kirsty's here to present the report. Anything you wish to add, Kirsty?
Good morning, members. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce the Community Planning and Engagement Report, incorporating the Enabling Community Empowerment Service Review. The Service Review was initiated by the Chief Executive's report of December 2014 on the future shape of the Council. The review followed the process as outlined in the Council Toolkit and is shown in the appendices. Kirsty Peden has been the lead officer, and I'd like to hand over to Kirsty to go over the main points of the Community Planning and Engagement Report and of the attached Service Review.
Thanks, Chair and Andy. I'm aware there's quite a level of detail in this report, so I will just add a few comments if that's okay, Chair. The review has been led by me with a team encompassing a wide range of skills, bringing together those experienced in community planning, community development, asset transfer and public involvement and community engagement. We have scoped the resources that we currently have to our disposal to deliver on this agenda. We have compared where we could with other local authorities and certainly with national research. We've engaged widely with our customers, in this case our community organisations, and that included community councils, community initiatives, facility management committees and an online community involvement process. We considered all of this information and as a result produced 4 options that are contained within the report. 2 of those are considered by the team as deliverable, with option 2, delivering community empowerment in partnership, as our recommended way forward. This option addresses the original outcomes set in the scope, delivers on the Council priorities and is absolutely the best approach in relation to making the most effective use of our resources across all community planning partners. This will increase the expertise, joint planning and coordination on how community planning partners engage and consult with our communities. It will connect our strategic policy and operational delivery better than it is currently, producing a structure where staff have responsibility and accountability at ward level. It will also enable our council and partners to respond to the Community Empowerment Act in a collective manner. A summary of what option 2 will deliver is provided in Appendix 1, and a full delivery plan is detailed in Appendix 2, Annex 9. At the end of last week, the Community Planning Executive Group received a similar report to that is in front of members, and where it was received well for information, obviously prior to any decisions taken this morning. The findings of the review have significantly contributed to the Director's vision and emerging structure of the Communities Department as detailed in the report. As the front face of the Council and lead for community planning, the Communities Department will lead the way in identifying new and better ways to deliver services with our communities and support those who are already doing this. Taking a locality planning approach, the community planning engagement structure will focus the majority of resources at ward level, working alongside elected members and communities and partners to identify our local priorities, allowing communities to influence service planning and delivery and take greater ownership of these wherever possible, ultimately seeking to achieve more active, resilient and involved communities. As I've mentioned, there's significant detail within the appendices in the report, but happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. Members?
Thanks, Chair. It's on page 41, obviously the Community Planning Engagement Manager, working our way down to 9 ward workers, obviously subject to a boundary change. Has there any other authorities in England or Wales or Northern Ireland been working along this this system of a ward worker? It's quite a good idea, and I think a number of elected members will be quite pleased if a ward worker is coming into place. I'm just wondering about the costs of the ward worker, and is there any other local authority trialled this in Scotland?
Thanks, Councillor Bell. There are other local authorities who are taking a locality planning approach, and although they may not term the posts that deliver this type of activity as ward workers, there certainly are other local authorities where their structures are focusing their community development, community planning, locality planning in terms of responding to some of the requirements of the Community Empowerment Act and asset transfer type activities, where the community has access to a single point of contact, if you like. So although it may be termed differently or wrapped up in a different title, there are a number of other local authorities in Scotland certainly that are taking this approach. With regards to costs, the review team started off with a budget of just under 1.2 million, which included across different council departments resources that contribute to this type of activity. And we have certainly recommended to the Director in terms of his reshaping of the department that budget would not reduce any. And in fact, although that structure has still to come out more clearly, and depending on decisions today, we are confident that there would be no less resource being identified towards this activity. And that's primarily because there was no budget saving attached to the service review originally.
Thank you, Chair.
That's
I've just got a couple of questions. The first one is on the asset transfer request, which I absolutely understand, and some of them have been really successful. What I'm just wondering is what you've put in place for assets that get, and it says here that the request to do so must be granted unless the public authority has reasonable grounds not to do so. So communities have absolute access to assets in their area. But I just wonder what happens if those assets fall into disrepair because that group is no longer there, or they've moved on, or the desire for having that asset is not needed anymore. What safety net have you put in place to make sure that communities don't end up with assets that the council are not responsible for, or are the council responsible for them? And what happens if the community no longer wants to look after them?
Thanks, Councillor Gilroy. I think what we are trying to address as part of the delivery plan of the review is to make asset transfer a simpler process for communities, to refresh our policy, to take cognizance of the point, one of the points certainly that you've raised, in that currently the policy does not allow for what happens if a community organisation can no longer run the community facility that it has responsibility for. And what we need to do when refreshing the policy is make it clear to community organisations before the asset is transferred what the implications would be should they not be in a position to maintain it. And that part of that is about supporting them in terms of their business planning process ensuring that they are a sustainable organisation before the transfer happens. I think a lot of energy and effort needs to go, or increased energy and effort needs to go in before the transfer would happen, but also in explaining for community organisations the implications that once they take an asset, what that means. And currently in the delivery plan, what we're saying is there's a number of different policies within the council. The community asset transfer policy would need to be refreshed to do that. And also what we're saying is we need to reconsider how communities are supported in the asset transfer process. And that may be through either commissioning of services or reorganisation of services within the council structure.
Yes, but I mean, that's fine for the next 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 years. I'm kind of looking further down when you've got a building, for instance, sitting in the middle of a village that isn't used anymore. Who does it belong to? Who is actually responsible for the upkeep and stop it from being dangerous or just looking a mess? Or, you know, and I think I think it's all for communities getting hold of assets within their area, but there does have to be something more robust than just a bit of work before they hand it over, because was handing over to future council members, whatever, a bit of a nightmare if it doesn't work. And some of them will work really well and will be going forever and ever, but some, by the nature of the beast, will not. And I was just thinking, we had a thing at Audit Committee the other day about 3G pitches that were handed over to clubs, and they were obliged to put in a sinking fund so that they can replace that 3G pitch after 10 years, and so that it doesn't come back to the council to have to replace that 3G pitch. And I just wonder if there should be something put in there. But if they're doing everything for bare minimum payment, you know, within communities, which tends to happen, there isn't going to be any spare money. So I'm quite anxious about it, because I think we're setting ourselves up to leave a bit of a mess if we're not careful.
Make any difference? The Community Empowerment Act, what we do now where we sell assets off at peppercorn price to a community organisation, is there any difference to the terms and conditions in the sale? It's just a change in the law that gives the community the right to do it rather than us the right to decide. In terms of how you transfer it, I don't think there's any difference in the legal transaction, is there?
There's no difference in the legal transaction as far as I'm aware from the Act. I think what would be different would be taking members' views and when we refresh the community asset transfer policy to look at some of these issues in more detail. And certainly I'm aware that currently we don't have anything within the policy with regards to making it clear for community organisations the impact that if they can no longer run those facilities, what that means. I think, and we should be more preemptive about making that clearer for communities before they take the responsibility on.
Stephen?
Yeah, it's kind of around the same point. Obviously, there's a policy for transfer of asset to buy a community asset for less than best, but the actual Act is allowing for use of, leasing, managing, and we're going to have there's a paper later in this agenda which looks at the management of facilities as opposed to the ownership. And I think maybe that's kind of what's been touched on as well. If we're in a long-term relationship where we still own the building but it's not managed by us, I think there's a distinction to be made there. The other thing with that is clearly whenever community bodies lease, manage or buy land from us, that will release an associated budget that we would normally have been using to maintain those assets when they were under our custodianship. So how do we keep track of what we're spending currently on the list of assets owned or leased by the authority, and as and when they get bought or transferred, what that then releases for us to use in different budget demands?
Thanks, Councillor. I would need to discuss with colleagues in property services how they calculate currently what funds are used to maintain properties where they're in council ownership. But certainly that could be something that would be considered by members as part of any refresh of the community asset transfer policy. And it could be items like this that we do when we refresh that policy that we take cognizance of.
Councillor Dryburgh?
Thanks very much. You're just coming back to what you said at the start. Let's, try and not have any sort of innuendos and suggestions that aren't true. Looking at Appendix 2, Annex 2, with the focus groups, for instance, one of the probably most important things to take this along is take our staff with us. And communication is obviously a really important thing. Now, looking at the staff there, I'm sure that's not all the staff in this particular area, but what communication plan have you got to ensure that the staff understand exactly what's going on here, depending on the decision today, of course, and how's that going to be sort of cascaded down to those members of staff who haven't been involved in the focus group?
Thanks, Councillor. Clearly, there is a commitment to engage and consult with staff, and the Community and Customer Services Department, as it is currently, has a policy on that in terms of how it drives that forward. A lot depends, obviously, on decisions taken today, and the service review process has a requirement to consult and engage with staff, and that information, as provided in the report, contributes to the options that are ultimately presented for members to consider. So following decisions today, then obviously all staff who are impacted upon by the report and the findings and decisions taken would be informed of that. And also it would be for the director in terms of his reshaping of the department to keep staff informed when it relates to something more specific. And obviously there are HR policies and procedures that we would use to make sure that happens. But certainly during the process, staff consultation has been carried out, and also the joint trade unions have been involved in the review team.
Thank you. Anybody else? Steve?
Thank you for letting us in again, Chair. It's actually a question to do with roads and pavements. Now, I appreciate that...
Wrong committee.
Yep, no, and maybe it is at the moment. But I think the point I'm trying to get at is when you're looking at localities and the concerns of local communities, often one of the key things that's tied into both the grounds maintenance and the other aspects of, I suppose, what the communities directorate's looking at the moment is the relationship between possibly the two directorates in terms of how they deliver to the needs and wishes of the community. And I think that the roads and pavements aspect of that is a key part of that, but sadly not able to be included currently in this particular plan. And I'm just wondering if we could maybe get a little bit of information about how the directorates are working together to encapsulate the philosophy between both Plan and Environment and Communities Directorate, so that there's not going to be an obstacle to delivering what the community is looking for through the Communities Directorate, that maybe roads might be slower in the uptake or resistant for different reasons. And I'm just, any addition to that would be helpful.
Thanks, Chairman. That's a very helpful question. Quite clearly, there's been a lot of discussion around this issue with members, and we've reflected back over the years since reorganisation 1996, where we saw the unitary authorities and we saw schemes of decentralisation. We're now in 2016, and this would appear to be the latest thinking, and certainly in terms of Scottish terms, I think we're in the vanguard of our approach to what we're doing here. The discussion we've had across directors has been that, first and foremost, we can no longer be doing things on a department basis in each of our localities. We need to do so as a council. And that's why when you as members agreed the reshaping policy, what you were clear about was that the one department that would lead the interface with communities was in fact the Communities Department. And what's been most encouraging since you did that has been other directors have been fully supportive of that approach. So your question was asked earlier about the costs of the structure, and I think that's, again, a fair question. The point is, other directors have realised if we get the structure right, it actually presents a better way of working for them as well. So therefore, there's always been a recognition that this structure is crucial for the whole council, not just for the Communities Department. So in the next few weeks, once we've taken the decision today, I'm scheduled to meet with all management teams of the other three directorates to discuss how specifically their services at a local level will actually contribute to the locality plans we're talking about. So in other words, the locality plans won't just be the services run through this department. The locality plans will include all of the services and all of the activities for the whole council. And if we embrace option 2, we will get to a point over time that it actually embraces the work of community planning partners as well. So it's certainly not short in vision, it's certainly not short in ambition, but from a public perception, the public, quite frankly, aren't too concerned which part of the council it is that's delivering the service, or indeed whether it's somebody out with the council. What they're concerned about is the service fit for purpose? Is it delivering what it should be? And is it making a difference to my community or my individual life? So we're quite clear that's the challenge we have, and nobody's understating it's a huge challenge. On the ward visits, we came across a whole number of wicked issues, I would call them, where they cut across not just council departments, but they cut across other public agencies. And these are the very issues that we need to be at the forefront of, saying these are what should be in locality plans, and therefore locality plans will include all aspects of the issues that matter most to communities. So communities will have a say and will shape the content. So in terms of the question from Councillor Thompson, Chairman, a lot of work being done with departments, with community planning partners to see locality plans that are inclusive and reflect the important issues that communities have identified at a local level.
Councillor Maitland.
Thank you very much indeed. I want to say that I welcome this proposal and the recommendations in them. What I would ask in terms of detail is just to say that I think the names and in the structure on page 41, to be honest, are very confusing and rather similar. And I mean, I have to say they've already gone through my head 3 or 4 times, and I can't remember, what they are or what they're doing. So, if you call them red, blue, and green, I think I'd be rather happy. I think we'd probably be able to identify who's doing what. The director has just actually touched on something I was going to ask, which was, in essence, about getting things, community aspirations, and after they have consulted with us, because that's the secret, from a ward plan to a locality plan, and actually, how does a locality plan become, go into action and be translated then into council action? And I would also say, how can you have a locality plan without having a locality? And localities actually, in my view, are areas. So I think that's got to be teased out. I know that that's coming through the review of schemes. I know that, but I would simply put that down as a marker at this point.
Thanks, Chairman. That point is well made, and certainly what we need to be careful about is that there is no magic formula that says this is an identifiable community and this is the best approach. Nobody's suggesting for 1 minute that wards are communities in their own right. There are a number of communities within wards, and again, that was clearly demonstrated as part of the ward visits. So what we are clear about, though, is that there needs to be that clarity between what are the Dumfries and Galloway priorities within our single outcome agreement right through to what matters on the ground at a ward level. The joining up of that arrangements is clearly going to take time. It's going to require elected member input, and it's going to require compromise and discussion amongst all partners. So that work begins now that we've reached a point of presenting the findings today, and that will be something that certainly members' input will be crucial to, so we agree what that planning landscape looks like. But certainly from a community perspective, what does matter is the local issues on the ground, that there is a clear plan of action available that elected members at a ward level feel a sense of ownership of alongside their communities, and that plan and the priorities within it should feed into the overall plan for the council and be seen to influence that. And that's the test that we need to be able to apply going forward as we deliver on this agenda.
Thank you. Anybody else? That's it.
Just very briefly, and I welcome the idea of the ward workers and ward workers senior and all the rest of it. Just to be parochial, if we have, say, a couple of, or maybe 3 if we're lucky, ward workers in the Stewartry, will they be working out of Dar Road?
At this time, certainly there's no decision taken in terms of work location, but certainly there's no doubt about it that the 13 ward workers will be based as close to the ward as possible. That's the number one objective. So therefore, they'll certainly be based within the area that they're working. Absolute decisions still to be taken in terms of whether it's Dar Road, whether it's Dalbeattie Town Hall, whatever, but certainly they'll be working within the closest locality to the ward. And again, that'll be something that is discussed with members before any decisions are taken.
Councillor Syme.
Thanks, Chair. Within communities, I think there's a great deal of confusion with what the community can do. A lot of local projects have been looking at an easy read version of the Community Empowerment Bill and think they can go into cover that house next week. There is a lot of road to travel before they come to that. And a big problem that I have seen is the legal side of things. We've had a property empty for 30 years. If that property is needing repairs for safety, the council has to come and put the slates on it. Now that's 30 years, that's been a legal wrangle. We've got another one that was sold 4 years ago and they still haven't sorted it out. So there's a long road ahead in releasing some of these properties, and I think that's a big problem. We've recently set up a development trust, and we're trying to sort of explain things to the local groups and do it all as a community rather as we groups looking to do things here and there. And I think as a council as well, we need to sort of talk to some of the groups to explain exactly what this is. I don't know I know there's steps afoot to do that, but I think it's really important that we discuss a wee bit more communities exactly what this community empowerment gives them.
I think, Councillor Syme, you're right in that there is an easy to read version, and it almost goes from the easy to read version, which is about 2 to 3 pages, to the full act, which is obviously a very difficult document for some communities to get their head around. I think what we would be looking, obviously, from the Scottish Government when the guidance comes out in more detail is something that's kind of halfway, that is a bit more detailed in explaining what the implications of the Act are, but in slightly more than just 2 or 3 sides of A4, which is more of a kind of visionary and what the objective of the Act was about.
Finlay? No? Anybody else? No? Andy?
Thanks, Chair. I'm looking at 7.5.1 on page 61, and I'm assuming that the community planning partnerships will still continue as the prime place where the council and its partners. And I'm seeing this act here in this as a way of expanding that. And I'm actually wondering if we're going to receive some sort of report back to council, whichever committee, and exactly how the community planning partnership are actually going to show how they meet the terms of this act, because it's not up to us, for example, to tell them what to do. They should be driving us forward if it's a genuine partnership. So, and it also gives an opportunity, of course, to widen the net, to bring in others who are not normally around the table. But that is very, very much their remit and their role, and I would really welcome a report back on that.
I think, Councillor Ferguson, that following decisions taken by this committee, it would be for us to go to the Community Planning Executive Group for them to make a formal decision and consider it, in more detail. They've had a general update and they've been involved in the process to date, but certainly it's for members here to consider the option first and then for us to do that, and certainly we'd be keen to come back to members to update them on how that progresses.
Yep.
A different subject, Tom. Thanks, Chair. I'm just page 41. I'm looking at your structure here. There seems an awful lot of ward worker seniors and not as many doers at number 9. Is there a way we could maybe reduce the top box and put more in the bottom box? Because I suggest they'll be the people that the elected members will be dealing with.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think just on the box, I think what I've said to members in the last few weeks is obviously this is bringing together resources from 2 separate departments just now. So on the one hand, the people who are doing the strategic posts are crucial in terms of implementing the work at a regional level with the community planning partnership that you just mentioned, as well as ensuring that this council is at the forefront of implementing the Community Empowerment Act. So quite clearly bringing these together, these resources now into the one department is very helpful. we spent a lot of time thinking about the ward workers, and the key thing to emphasise is that there are 13 ward workers, and they all will have very similar job descriptions, and I'll use your term, Councillor Ferguson, they're all doers. That'll be the key requirement of the post holder to satisfy in the matching process, that they want to be out there working directly with communities and doing things along the lines that this review proposes. The simple reason that we need to have 4 senior ward workers is, firstly, this is a challenging agenda, and therefore we need to ensure there is a degree of supervision and support for staff in what will be a challenging post, given the complexity, given the newness of it. So it's ensuring that for the 13 ward workers, there's a degree of supervision, there's a degree of support for what they do, but primarily, I would suggest 13 ward workers, by and large, will be spending the vast majority of their time working at a grassroots level with communities, making a difference. And the level of management will be there for the benefit of those employees in terms of the newness of this agenda and ensuring that there is appropriate support and supervision for them. And clearly, over the period of implementing it, we can then review that and take stock of any lessons learned, and we're happy to do that. But your point's well made. Thank you.
Can I come back into your... Thanks. So will they be, in your vision, Derek, are they going to be the people who would we still use EMES, or would we go to the ward workers?
So to you, Chairman, it's a really fascinating question, because a number of members who have paraphrased the position. Does that mean we still need to use EMES? If I had a pound for every time that's been said in the last few weeks, it'd be quite interesting. So clearly we want members to, and I'm sure members do, embrace technology. The benefits of it is it's there, it's a system that records it, and therefore we can ensure there's an audit trail. The risk sometimes in the past that we always refer to is when elected members have had a conversation in a corridor with an officer, and 3 months later nothing's happened, and there's a debate on did that conversation take place, and there's sometimes not an audit trail to support that. So there's clear benefits, and I wouldn't be doing anything other than continuing to support what we see as the benefits of EMES. However, quite clearly, I would hope the ward workers are on your patch, working with you, and that will certainly reduce. I wouldn't for 1 minute imagine that every time you have a conversation you want to follow it up with an EMES. So I think the spirit of it is, yes, this approach should actually reduce the need to have to resort to EMES for those local issues that can be resolved quickly and readily at a local level. So very much embrace that as being one of the benefits, that it will give a quick resolution to the tricky issues that sometimes you don't know who to go to get some of these questions, at least not always answered with a result that's an outcome that does something, but sometimes it's just the explanation or the clarity of what sits behind it. And as part of that, what I would say is we also need to get better at ensuring that before we actually then move towards the implement the solution, sometimes we actually need to get better at involving you and the elected members, or the member of the public or the community group who have raised the issue, to ensure before we then implement the solution that we've actually got clarity on what the problem is before we just steam ahead with jumping in with 2 feet. So the key principle here is, on the ground, you will have access to resources, and that should certainly reduce the need to use EMES, because hopefully it's a far more responsive system.
Yeah, my question was along the same lines with regards to the table 1 at page 41. I think you've partly answered it, Derek, but I think my understanding is that there's 13 ward workers effectively, 1 for each of the wards, and the ward worker seniors will actually have a kind of strategic kind of responsibility for that region, as well as actually having a allocated ward. The one thing that I know it's a very comprehensive report and a good report, but the one thing I can't see is there doesn't seem to be any indication of the grading of these roles within the unit. Is that something that's yet to be decided, or why is that information not here?
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the 2 questions that you raised there, Councillor Marshall, and I thank you for the first one, because you're absolutely right. What we also need to be careful with the ward workers in supporting them is They will be effective if they actually, as we've said in the report, have good induction and good training. And again, we've recognised members will be key to that training along with community planning partners. Therefore, the key part of the senior ward worker role is for that person to have the skills and the experience to understand the wider picture across the council. So it's very important that we don't just see things operating in a parochial 13 wards where we end up with 13 different ways of doing things. There's clearly got to be responsiveness, flexibility and localism, but at the same time we can't afford to cut across standard processes. So you're absolutely right, that is one of the key functions of the senior ward worker. In terms of the grading of these posts, they're certainly in the process of that being done, but they're not in any way through the job evaluation process. So there's no grades known for these posts at the present time. What, in response to the earlier question from Councillor Archer-Dryborough, what we've just literally been completing as a management team is the report for full council later this month that brings forward the management structures for all the council departments, and that will certainly bring in more detail in terms of cost, because bear in mind this structure along with the other structures need to deliver the £2 million management savings that we've agreed as part of the management change. So that report to full council will provide more detail on these savings, and as I say, once we have a direction of travel from today, we'll then proceed to put these posts through the job evaluation process, gradings, etc. And certainly what I'm clear about is these are important posts. We need to attract the right people with the conditions, pay, rewards, training and development will be crucial in terms of these posts. So we're certainly clear about where these sit within the organisation. They're key posts and should have appropriate pay and recognition accordingly.
Marion?
Thanks, Chair. I think it's more probably a statement, Derek, than anything else, but you obviously were listening on your ward visits, because this has been really long overdue, a ward worker. I've had organisations through my area that's always asking who the point of contact is for them, and it can never really seem to bottle down to something. That's really refreshing. The only thing I probably would say is my concern is I know through our end that sometimes the workload can be quite overpowering. So I would worry that maybe the workload for that one person would be concerning, and the management team that's above them make sure that they get the support they need. And also from us as councillors too, to make sure that we're there to support them too, because personally from my point of view, I couldn't function sometimes without my area framework team in Stranraer. So I'm very glad that I've got them, and I'm hoping that maybe we can repay back from that side of it.
No, thank you, Councillor McCutcheon. Your points are well made in terms of the management of the staff and the culture we create. And I have to say, certainly all elected members who I've spoken to on this acknowledge that we need to be seeing this very much consistent with joint working between officers and members. That's embraced within the member officer protocol, and certainly in the early days it will be crucial that when we move to the induction, as we've said in the report, that you as ward members help with that induction to ensure that there's a greater understanding of what elected members do and how best you can get support from officers. And the important thing I think you've made is that this ward worker will then be able to pull on other resources from across the council, because other departments, as I say, have recognised this is the structure they want for the whole council, that they want to work with and use. So therefore, in support of Councillor Thompson's earlier points, it will impact across the whole council and community planning partners as the recognised structure for communities' entries into the council and the wider public sector.
Okay, and last one, Councillor Maitland.
Thank you very much. Was it me? Chairman, this is really quite a substantial change for our partners, I would suggest, for us as well in working together with the partners. How are we going to be able, whether it's community planning partnership, or how are we going to check that this is actually working? How will we know? And how often will we be able to consider success or otherwise?
Thanks, Chair. The plan is to go to the community planning strategic partnership and obviously have the agreement and agree which areas, which partners want to contribute to which elements of the review. You know, for example, some may have assets and wish to create a collective asset transfer process, others may not. So we need to bottom that out really as a partnership, I think, first. As part of that process, we need to look at how will we measure success and how will that be reported. Obviously, it would be reported at the community planning level, but also within internal to the council. As the Communities Department has responsibility for community planning, it would feature within the business plan for the Communities Department to some extent. There would certainly be indicators. In the very early stages, it will be the outcomes of the review that are measured and will be reported as part of the Communities Department business plan. But clearly we need to look longer than that because some of the outcomes that will be achieved should be longer lasting, and that's where I think the discussion will be at the community planning level in terms of longer term outcomes that we'll look to measure. Certainly initially it will be within the Communities Department business plan.
Thanks. I just think there should be something. It's not a watermark because we don't need watermarks anymore, but something should run through like a stick of rock that the public does not care which organisation you as a member of staff belong to. They just want a good service. So with that, just have an overarching driver. I look forward to receiving indications that this is going to work. I hope it will.
Finally.
Just a statement, Chairman. I wholeheartedly welcome this. Right back from the days many years ago when I was the chairman of Community Council, there was a disjoint between funding bodies, third sector and the council, and confusion in how communities move forward. I think now it's you maybe say it's an ill wind, but with reduced budgets and our reliance on communities doing more for themselves, this is coming right at the right time. So I wholeheartedly go with the recommendations.
Thanks very much, Finlay. Move on to the recommendations. 2.1, acknowledge the work that's been undertaken to complete the Enabling Community Empowerment Service Review. 2.2, agree the review team's recommendations of option 2, which also encompasses option 1. 2.3, support the Communities Directorate taking forward community planning engagement. And 2.4, recommend the relevant findings of the Enabling Community Empowerment Service Review relating to remit of area committees are considered by the Review of Schemes Subcommittee for reviewing the future role of area committees. Members happy with that? Thank the officers very much for their work, and could we get Councillor Yen back in as well, please? Item 6 is the budget and income pressures, leisure and sport and cultural services. Members will recall at our meeting in December we agreed the need to take appropriate actions to redesign services so as to address the current budget and income pressures within leisure, sport and cultural services. The committee also agreed the measures that we would wish to be subject to public engagement. Therefore, I'm particularly pleased to note high numbers of people who took part in the information and customer engagement exercise. Total of 959 responses is most encouraging. It is clear to me that the results of the public engagement are supportive of the measures outlined in more detail in Appendices 1 and 2 of this report. We've also made sure that we have fully embraced the member officer protocol by providing ward members with the fullest information on these proposals. Under separate cover, elected members will be provided with a summary of the feedback received from ward members. Harry Hayes here to present the report. Anyone to add?
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, members. Clearly a key priority of the community's senior management team is to deliver on all our financial responsibilities, and this very much includes delivering a balanced budget, which is what this exercise is all about. I just want to reinforce to members the clear distinction between this exercise and the budget development process as outlined in 3.5 of this report. As I said, this is all about balancing the current budget If this doesn't happen, we will simply be faced with an ongoing budget pressure as we enter next financial year. Overall, my general assessment of the public feedback is that they very much recognise the challenge we all face, and also that we need to be as proactive as possible about focusing the resources we do have to the very best of effect, and ensure that the frontline services they all very much enjoy and value continue to be delivered as efficiently as possible. This morning I have Lee Seaton who will answer any questions in relation to leisure and sport, and to my left Colin Freeman who will do the same for cultural services. So that's all I really want to add at this stage. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members? Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. While I'm not going to complain about the savings of 252,000 being actually in the paper also says that we actually only require 233,547. Yet at number 2 on the what we're being asked to agree is to implement all the savings. There are a couple in there that I would suggest one changing and what none doing when we get to actual recommendations. Can I just have some explanation as to why we're being asked to implement the full thing when we actually, the figure says we don't actually need to?
Thank you, Chair. What we've established is that the full range of measures does come to 233. However, we also recognise that in relation, for example, staffing, that we set the maximum figure, and then through the management of our staffing, we might not get to that maximum proposal on maximum level. So it gives us a little bit of leeway. However, I think to ensure that we get to a position of sustainability, I think we have to aim for the maximum level of the proposals.
Yeah, thanks for letting me back in, Chair. As you say, there was quite a high response for the public. If you look at page 151, there's one there that the public are actually against, and there's obviously in the report there's an alternative for that saving. If you go over to the next page, in item 10, there is one proposal on the fitness suite that the public appear to be dead set against. Yet if you removed the increase in the fitness suite and you took the proposal that's mentioned in the report of only taking a 5% cut in the spending of the library, you would still agree more savings than the 233,547.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I think what we've endeavoured to try and do is outline realistic projections that are ultimately sustainable. I think what we tried to do to try and make it as clear as possible as a management team, there are equally 1,001 different permutations we could present. What we've tried to do is make sense of all the feedback from the public, and on a balanced and proportionate basis present proposals that we are confident as a management team that we will deliver on a recurring and a sustainable basis. But acknowledging, as Councillor McClung has said, that there are a number of different permutations that could fall under each of the headings presented.
Thanks, Tom. I think it's been acknowledged over the last few years that reducing the spending on library books was not a good thing. A few years ago we cut back on the spending, and then the following year we had to put it back up again. And I see on page 151 that the public actually are more or less saying that we should be spending money in books to attract people in. If you don't spend the money in books and they don't come in, that's one part. But the reference at the library as well, we're talking about footfall coming in. People don't just use the library for books. It's used for a number of things. I mean, that reference centre there is absolutely first class. The money we've spent in it recently has been very good. Well, very well spent. And also you're getting people coming in, trying to trace their family trees, etc. and that. Now, we're talking about cutting back the hours there. It was always said previously that if the yurt was open longer, anyone else that lived in the Dumfries area, if their library shut, they would always have somewhere to get it, a book on a Saturday afternoon. And I think that should remain the case. But the footfall is not just about people coming in for books. Libraries are centres for the public. They attract people from everywhere. And it would be a sad thing if we were shutting the yurt at 1 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon.
Thank you, Chair. I think, Councillor Graham, you're 100% correct that the footfall is not the only measure of how a library is used. And I think over the last 2 years, as the business has changed, we've recognised that there are other things that happen. We do have statistics that show us that the level of library use at the end of a day is lower, and that's helped inform our proposals. We've got evidence that states that the level of public access PC use is lower at the end of the day, so that's informed the proposal. But I do also recognise that the yurt building is unique, that it's not only a library or a customer service centre, it does have the archives and local studies, and I think that's why 8B is also a proposal that we put forward, that we try and maintain as much use as possible across all 4 facilities in Dumfries.
Sean, then Finlay.
Thanks, Chair. This one's for Lee, I think. It's page 154, number 9. Just kind of general, just an observation. It's the Newington Leisure Centre. We're cutting the hours on the Sunday. I'm just wondering, it says that it's 3.9% of the total attendances. I just wondered if you could maybe, if you know what the figure is, but also as well, is that an unusual trend for a leisure facility on a Sunday? Because I would have thought you would get quite high numbers on a Sunday, as you know, most people are off.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, first of all, the attendances I can confirm for Councillor Marshall. The typical annual or the most recent annual attendance figure for that facility was 29,500. The Sunday contribution to that was 1,168, so just under the 4% figure of that total attendance. We have a fairly mixed pattern in terms of our pattern of usage across our facilities. Our peak time are quite clearly in the early evening times in terms of post-school, when we have our significant after-school development programmes, be that Rainbow Swim scheme, gymnastics scheme, but then the predominant use of our fitness suites, fitness classes are midweek evenings as opposed to weekends.
Finlay, then Patsy.
Thanks, Chair. Just regards the likes of libraries and whatever, we've in Dalry, we've had a response for the community to say they would like to keep the library open longer and are willing to provide volunteers and whatever to do that. Has there been any engagement with any groups with the libraries where there's a reduction in hours suggested, where local groups could volunteer to keep them open? Now, there may be some services that are not available just because of the nature of them. The likes of lending books and things, is there any reason why we can't approach some of the community councils or community groups in these around these facilities to actually keep the levels at current numbers?
Cheers, thank you. No reason why not. I think it would be a natural next step. The example at Dalry is a perfect one, what we want to try and achieve in terms of enhancing the services that we already deliver. And I think some good progress has been made with the Dalry Community Council. And I think, as I said, I think it'll be a natural next step for me to engage with the community councils.
Aye, so for example, in 6 months' time, would we hope to look and see that the numbers, the opening hours have not actually changed? Is that a target? Would we be looking to retain the number of hours using volunteers?
I think what we would look to do is maximise the potential of a volunteer in terms of not necessarily increase the core functioning or the hours of the core function, but if a community group wants to come in and use a facility for a reading group, absolutely we can do that. or if they want to come and use it as an activity space, then absolutely we can do that as well. In terms of the core function, I don't see the core hours increasing. However, if the community want to take ownership of that building for a period of time in the evening, absolutely.
Now I see what you're saying. I would rather see some effort to persuade the communities to keep those core hours open. You know, it's lending books. We're only looking at 4 hours a week or whatever. You know, again, that was the reason for Dalry. It's not to have another community space. We've got enough community space in Dalry. It's actually to keep. It's the core function. It was actually the lending the books and access to the computer, whatever was important to the community.
Thanks, Chairman. What we're currently doing is bringing forward the end-of-year business plan for CCS, and at the same time we'll be looking at a refreshed business plan. And what I've said to the management team is that given the financial pressures facing the council, particularly the types of services we're discussing today, we need to increase, as we know, the community involvement, community ownership, and one part of that is a more progressive volunteer policy. Now, we need to be very careful that there's all sorts of legislation we need to comply with, not just health and safety, but also protecting of vulnerable people, given the use of libraries. So that the principle, I can assure members, is one we're embracing, and that is going to be a suggestion that we include that in the next version of the department's business plan. So therefore it will be for members to scrutinise that and indeed shape the direction of travel. But we're certainly quite clear, given the financial pressures, given the opportunities that we face with a fairly active community in Dumfries and Galloway that we're well aware of and very fortunate to have. We need to maximise that, and we need to do that through a partnership approach. And certainly the intention going forward is we currently have a number of volunteers in arts and cultural services, so there's certainly not a shortage of volunteers at the present time. And as members are well aware, communities would not be able to be delivering the range of things they do without volunteers. We need to be better at now integrating that with some of our services, such as libraries, and therefore commitment from today is that will be something that will be brought forward as a proposal in the refreshed business plan, and we'll look forward to members' views being taken on board on that.
Back to you then, Jane.
Thank you. I'm looking at page 152, so it's Lee, I think we'll be dealing with this, and I'm looking at 8, 9 and 10, and I see with 8 and 9 that it's reducing costs and there's going to be savings in that, and efficiencies, and I'm just kind of wondering how you're going to get £20,000 worth of efficiencies out of a free coin return. I don't really see how that works. And I just wonder how you're doing it. And the other thing I was just slightly concerned about was the charges for the likes of skating lessons and the athletics and all the rest of it in item 10. And, you know, we do want to keep these classes being used, and I just wonder how you're going to assess the success of it. You know, if after a year or 6 months you say, we haven't made those efficiencies, we have got less people using these facilities, we've got less people coming forward. I mean, do we have a timeline when we say, well, actually, this wasn't the best way to deal with efficiency?
Thank you, Councillor. Dealing with the latter point, first of all, then, in terms of the proposed increases at number 10, in terms of skating lessons, athletics, etc. I guess I would maybe begin by referring back to Councillor McClung's point as well. We do stress in the report that yes, we are seeking to achieve a slightly higher number of savings than the figure that is required. One of the reasons that we touch on in 3.12 of the report is that we have to be mindful that there is a risk and a degree of variance in terms of price increases. We show the figures that we would hope to achieve based on maintaining our current usage numbers. So first of all, there is always a health warning with that. We believe that the prices stated at point 10, because they take us up to what is the national average based on information we receive from Sport Scotland that compares local authority prices for those activities, that we are able to accommodate that increase. And I can certainly specify in any individual item the amount that we would be looking to generate from each of those 6 individual increases that are listed there. The cumulative figure is 7,000. In terms of the earlier point about locker provision, We have an inconsistent practice just now across our region in terms of how customers are faced with lockers. For example, we have 2 sites where the coin retention mechanism, the coin return mechanism is already in existence, whereby you go in, you pay your swim price, and you put a pound coin into the locker, and that locker returns a pound coin to you. At the other sites, the expectation is that the price is price for the entry to the swim is marginally reduced because you have to pay an additional 20 pence into the locker, which is retained in the locker. And therefore, at the point of entry, you're paying 20 pence less because you then, when you go to use your locker, pay the 20 pence for your locker, which is retained. That 20 pence coin is retained. Now, whilst we do our very best with staff management to control that situation, we have an increasing number of complaints from users of our facilities where the public are not frequently using those lockers as we would anticipate them to, leaving clothes within cubicles, not using the lockers, and causing a bit of a tailback for the future users coming in. So what we're seeking to do is be consistent with the coin return sites, whereby we will have a consistent pricing policy and we will have a consistent use of £1 coin return lockers, which will be foolproof in terms of the discussion we've had with the contractors, is that bearing in mind changes to the £1 coins in the near future, that the mechanisms can be fitted so that they are able to adapt with the new £1 coin that will come in the future years.
I think it's quite a big efficiency at £20,000, is it not? Because you're not getting any 20p's at all. You're getting nothing. So you're charging more for your swim then, are you? For instance.
The efficiency is the difference between what we are gaining just now for those members of the public who are using their 20p's correctly, because we do have a percentage that are using that. We have significant numbers that don't. So the efficiency is based on those current users who use our facility and are not paying the 20 pence for the locker in the manner that is anticipated and should be, that it would be added on to the price, yes.
Take Jane, then John, then Stephen.
Chairman, you're not going to be particularly like this, but I think I've got to continue to apply gentle and relentless pressure to you. I have to ask, when are the scales going to fall from the administration's eyes on this particular issue? These savings in these services that we all really consider very dear to us are not going to get less. It's going to get more difficult for reasons that we all know. I think I really would say to you that it's perfectly possible to increase and embrace community input into these services and these facilities, and at the same time reduce your fixed costs, because you're not doing that. You've got rates at the moment which are continuing to remain exactly as they are, unchanged, and each time you reduce the take through people actually going through the doors, you are making life more difficult for yourselves. And I am referring, of course, to the issue of an alternative delivery model, which I know that you don't want to do it. I think I can probably even gently understand reasons in the past which have made you more chary about it, but it's now absolutely has to be done. It's not fair on the public.
I hear what you're saying, but it's not for discussion today. I would point out the very road we're going down is a community model, not the corporate model. We've already done it with the KG5 scenario. We're in the process of doing it with the David Keswick Centre. There are other areas to look at. It's far better it's done on a community basis than one massive big corporate body, particularly in an area like this, because then it lacks public accountability for buying anything else. Anyway, that's not for debate today. We're here to try and sort out this year's budget and lay the base for next year. So I'll take John, Simon, and Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. One for Lee, page 154. Surprise, surprise, it's item 7. Lee, at one time at Hillview Leisure Centre, Friday was the busiest night of the year because they had the floodlit football league and other stuff. Are these all set in stone? Because if funding for that came along again and it had to be a Friday night and there was another couple of users, would that then give us an opportunity to open again and relook it? Because you know, that was a real busy time then. And I know you've got to cut somewhere, but if the opportunity came along that there was going to be quite a lot of usage on a Friday night, is this set in stone or would it be relooked at?
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of the current revenue budget, should these be agreed, then that would be with effect from the current financial year, and we would have reapportioned that efficiency and saving across the leisure and sport budget so that we were looking to break even. In saying that, absolutely, where we have any facilities just now or any services, excuse me, that we are not providing, that we have external money on a fixed term basis for, we can certainly look to deliver on that fixed term basis with fixed term contracts, providing that we can cover the cost of delivering that service, be that the staff costs or the building or equipment costs. So that option is always available to us with external funding.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. It's a sort of two-parter. First bit is number 10 on page 155, Lochmaben Integrated Facility, and that includes the library, obviously. I'm reading that and I'm thinking, okay, people support a redesign of opening hours, that's fair enough. If you're optimising the best times to remain open, I think what I'm really saying is, can I get an assurance that it's not going to actually change the number of open hours, it's just optimising to be on those certain days, because it doesn't actually, it's almost like being missold your PPI. People can support a redesign or a moving delivery of service, but that's quite different in terms of a cutting of hours. So it's just to ensure that there's no change to the number of hours open, it's just when the hours are open, and that optimises with the staff. The second part is page 152, it talks about the Profiles Plus membership. Now, it's just interesting that, I know it's not for discussion today, as you firmly emphasised, but if you do buy a Profiles Plus, is there going to be a reducing number of facilities that you can use that at, and what is the customer actually buying? Because you can't use it at the KGV anymore. I'm sure you probably won't be able to use it at the David Keswick Centre. So as time goes on, as the year progresses and community groups take over the management of assets, will the Profiles Plus get you less and less anyway? So it's really just to get clarification on that as well.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of Lochmaben, what we'll be looking to do is refocus the staff resources to midweek to ensure that we can continue to deliver services. In particular to Lochmaben, we've got, as well as the statistical evidence, but anecdotal evidence, that there is significantly less use on a Monday evening. So it's about getting the most impact from the resources we've got. However, coming back to the example of Dalry and community involvement, I think Lochmaben would be a perfect example for that as well, whereas we're freeing up a potential slot where the community can come in and support the use of the facility.
Just on that specific point, so you're saying that you're just moving the hours from a Monday night to another day, you're not actually cutting the hours?
Chair, no, the hours will actually reduce, but the staff hours will remain the same. So we're focusing the staff resource at the point of most need.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor's correct in terms of the example of one facility that's transferred to an external provider is not currently provided through Profiles anymore. The absolute intention moving forward is that the Profiles package will remain open and available for all council-operated facilities. The intention would be within the David Keswick Centre as well, that the operator would have the freedom to create their own membership for that site if they so wish. But for all council-operated facilities, Profiles Plus will remain available to all users. I would stress, however, and I'm happy to share any information with members out with the committee, that the vast majority of our Profiles users are focused on their home site that they name at the point of them joining. They join with the home site, they have that flexibility to use facilities across the region, and that's definitely one of the benefits, but the vast majority of our users are within their home facility.
Thanks. Lee's response is just actually flag something else up. So can I add it to my list? I've got a couple of things here. So that means those who've signed up to have a whole region-wide thing will be getting a refund? That's the first question. Coming back onto the, because we can't take money off them for something they're no longer provided with, it's a change to contract. In terms of page 152, at number 10, I noticed that the athletics have got junior and adult, and the fitness have got fitness and fitness class and fitness suite and health suite. Yet the ice bowl only seems to have skating lessons. Where's the curling, the cost for curling in that? Is that staying the same? The other question is on page 153, number 5. Again, it's the ice bowl. Which 4-week period are we going to have? Given we've got a facility that's got international renown, high quality, visitors come, they know about it, and are we going to be shut in the height of the tourist season? That'd be a serious question. And last and by no means least, we've got a question within a question here when we come to agreeing, and that's on 8A or 8B. And nobody has raised that yet, so we're going to have to make a decision, Chair, sorry, on is it 8A or 8B before we go into the next part of the thing. So no doubt you've got that in hand.
I mean, I'm happy to move now, go for 8B.
Well, I would move 8A. The reason I would go for 8A would, in actual fact, would be there would be an equity right across the borough. They would all be closing at the same time, and the officers are saying it can, the current usage of the year could be done within the 3 hours proposed change.
You're not looking at the footfall. Okay, I've moved the motion.
Happy to second, Chair.
Yep, I've got an amendment.
If you're moving recommendations,
No. I think Andy's quite correct. I was going to come to this at a later stage once we finish the
sorry.
debate. But we do have an options within the proposal. So let's get that option out of the way first before we go on to the recommendation. For members are minded to go for 8A or 8B.
It is the same point. I would just ask that we do go for 8B, because that gives people who do not live in Dumfries the opportunity for a more use, if you see what I mean, to the central facility. So I would,
As the
I would ask
archive
that we do
centre
that.
as well for the region.
I'm quite happy to second Councillor Ferguson for 8A.
We have a motion and amendment. Proceed to the vote.
Okay, I have a vote, and it's a motion proposed by Councillor McCoftry and seconded by Councillor Dryborough to proceed with option B, A,
8B.
8B. And I have an amendment by Councillor Ferguson and seconded by Councillor McClung to proceed with option 8A. Councillor McCoftry.
Motion.
Councillor Martin.
Motion.
Councillor Carson.
Motion.
Councillor Collins. Councillor Drybrough.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Groom.
Motion.
Councillor Yen. Councillor McGregor.
Motion.
Councillor Maitland.
Motion.
Councillor Marshall. Councillor McClung.
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson.
Amendment.
Councillor McGregor. Sorry. Councillor McCutcheon.
Motion.
Councillor Syme.
Motion.
Councillor Stitt. And I can confirm that the motion carries with 14 to 4.
Thank you. We move on to the rest of the debate. Councillor McClung. Councillor Ferguson.
I didn't get an answer to my questions, actually, Chair. We moved on to that vote quite quickly.
Oh, sorry.
So, unless some of the questions are what you wanted me to ask, right?
If you can remind officers.
I think Lee's written them down.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in terms of the reference to the charges shown at point 10, there is no curling shown there because curling, like all the other charges that are not shown there, we are already operating at or above the national average. Charges that are shown there are where we currently have prices below the national average. In terms of the other point about the proposed shutdown period, there has been discussion with the ice clubs who utilise that facility to try and reach agreement on the most suitable period of time. So it is looking from the mid-June to the mid-July period, which we believe is going to have the least impact upon our users of that facility. The last point from Councillor was in relation to change of contract regarding the example of the David Keswick Centre and the transfer to the Greyston Foundation charitable organisation. Our intention would be, as we did with the transfer of management arrangements for King George V and Queen of the South, where we did engage with legal about the notification we're required to give to profiles users who are using KG5 to explain the options available to them, both in terms of the new membership from the Queen of the South operator. We will do likewise in terms of writing to the users of the David Keswick Centre as their home Profiles Plus site, offering them the option to transfer to the arrangement that we put in place with Greyston Rovers and the Greyston Rovers Foundation. We're looking at a timeline of 6 months after the start of the financial year in terms of that facility operating. So we would be writing out to those users very soon.
Thank you.
Councillor McClung.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I hear what's being said regarding the changes that they're asking us and the reason why we're going for 252. However, changes that are proposed in any budget template come with much the same health warnings that were being given today, yet we still take the figures supplied that are in the templates. I'm perfectly happy as regarding recommendation 2, obviously taking cognizance of the fact that we've now went for 8B, I'm quite happy to put forward a motion that we agree to implement the proposals as detailed in appendices 1 and 2 with the following amendments. We only take a 5% reduction in the spend on library lending items, and we have no increase in charge for the fitness suite, which would then result in a 237600 saving being realised, if my maths is correct.
You want to respond on that, Lee?
I can certainly respond in relation to the fitness suite element. I think, Councillor, you were referring to. Yes. Yeah. If that was to be left at the current price, that contributed 1,900 towards our cumulative figure at point 10 there of 7,000. So that would be 1,900 to deduct from the proposed efficiency. I can hand to Colin for the other one.
Thank you, Chair. I think the proposal is there that 5% reduction in library spend, and if that is supports a suite of sorry.
Yeah, Chair, if I just come in, just regarding the maths, we're proposing 252. If we only take a 5% reduction in the spending in the library, that reduces it by 12 and a half. That makes the new saving total of 239,500. If we don't take the charge, the increased charge in the fitness suite, as has just been said, that reduces it by 1,900, which by my maths comes down to a 237,607.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, at the bottom of page 151, we are projecting that if we reduce the level of spend in library lending items by 10%, that would generate 25k per annum. What Councillor McClung is suggesting is that we only reduce the spend by 5%, which would equate to 12,500k per annum. Yes, just so I'm clear, not that I'm doubting your calculation in any shape or form, Jim. Lee's outlined that £1,900 is the figure attached to the leisure and sport provision. So on that basis, that is certainly a permutation that could continue to deliver what we're intending to do. But obviously the 1,900 would be more than offset by the 12.5k.
Thank you, Chairman. You're quite right that in simple terms there's £18,000 of additional kind of savings generated from these options deliberately, as we've said in the report, because quite clearly there's a degree of we're moving into the unknown, and therefore we've deliberately balanced that approach. The proposals from Councillor McClung, my maths simply indicate that that would still give us £3,500 of savings circa. And certainly, if that's the view of the committee, you can be assured that officers will monitor these proposals rigorously. The important thing is that today, members, what we'll have achieved is a significant efficiency in the management of leisure and cultural services from where we were this time 9 months ago, and therefore would certainly thank the members for their fullest support in the last few months to move to that position. And it certainly achieves £250,000 efficiencies, while protecting front-line services to the best of our ability, which is clearly the wish of this council.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's going to have the desired effect of getting our budget back into kilter, it just cuts out the margin for error. That's all it's doing, essentially. It may well be something that has to be revisited, but members are happy to go on with that. I see no problem. Councillor Grimm?
I just feel that as the majority have shown that not to reduce the spending of libraries and the books, because it has been proven in the past that when we reduce the spending of that, the next time or the next time again, they have to put it back up again.
Councillor McGregor?
Thank you, Chair. It was just going back to the point of Lochmaben, and I think Patsy and I were both sort of screwing our faces up at the answer that Councillor Thompson asked. How by cutting Monday evening but not cutting staff do we save money? I don't really understand the concept that if you cut the service to the user but you're not cutting the staffing,
there can't possibly be a saving. So that would be my first point. And my second one's merely an observation. You know, we're in tough times at the moment. We really are. If it were up to me, I would be taking the whole shebang today, I'm afraid. And that may or may not be popular. But I think the public understand that they are going to see a wee bit of an impact. And when we're seeing libraries actually shutting across Scotland, what we're managing to do here is fairly minimal in comparison. And I would commend the department for that.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the reduction in hours and then not reduction in contracted staff, where we are at the moment is whenever we have a period of annual leave or a period of sickness absence, we do have to call upon the use of casual staff, which is an additional cost. So by refocusing the contracted hours, then reduces the need to call in additional staff.
Andy?
Thanks very much, Chair. I think we have to commend Mr. Crichton and his staff here for getting this back into budget. I think that's the first thing. Jim put forward a proposal, and I'm happy to second that.
Oh, don't need a second. There's been no dissent. The impression I got from everyone
well,
around the
we
table was
respect
quite
no,
happy.
because Gail's saying something different.
No. I think, the impression I got from the nodding heads around the table was no need for a second, that it's unanimous by the committee. Jane?
Well, if this was an exact science, Chairman, I would be absolutely happy to agree with you. But it's not an exact science. You know, we don't absolutely for certain know that these particular savings or these particular amounts of money will be made. And that's a concern. I mean, all that's happening is that we're putting off the evil hour. I think I'm going to say, if this is a recommendation, I will be happy to support a proposal to go with the recommendation. That's with 8B.
You get a seconder for that?
Sure. I'll second that.
Okay.
Yes, the amendment, just so as I'm clear, the amendment is to take all the savings that is in appendices 1 and 2, just so that I'm absolutely clear.
Yeah. 8B.
And you're moving?
Yeah, I'm moving that we only take a 5% reduction in the spend in the library, which will reduce the savings by 12,500, and we take no change in the charge of the fitness suite, which would reduce the savings by 1,900. And if you look at the appendix, they're the ones that are causing the public the most problem. As regarding what Councillor Groom's saying, I would dearly love not to take any spending for the library, but we are in a world of pain at the minute, and anything we can do to reduce the savings, reduce the cuts required, I think we've got to take. Unfortunately, we have to reduce the savings in the library because we can't do it any other way.
Happy to second on the basis that I thought with unanimity around the table, so I'm happy to second that. Can we move to the vote? Sorry?
I'm even slower this afternoon now. Right? I'm a wee bit slow. What's the motion and what's the amendment here? Everybody's just chucking their thumbs worth in.
I have a motion put forward by Councillor McClung and seconded by Councillor McCoughtry that remove only for a 5% spend in the libraries and take no change in terms of the fitness suite. Is that happy with the wording? And the amendment by Councillor Maitland is that the committee stick to the recommendations, and this was seconded by Councillor Carson.
Okay. Good vote.
Okay. Councillor McCoughtry.
Motion.
Councillor Martin.
Motion.
Councillor Bell. No, present. Councillor Carson.
Amendment.
Councillor Collins. Councillor Drybrough.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson,
Motion.
Councillor Gilroy, Councillor Groom,
Motion.
Councillor Yen. Motion. Councillor McGregor,
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland,
Amendment.
Councillor Marshall,
Motion.
Councillor McClung,
Motion.
Councillor McCutcheon,
Motion.
Councillor Stitt, Councillor Syme,
Motion.
Councillor Thompson.
Motion.
And the motion carries from 13 votes to 4.
Thank you very much. Move on to item 7, Kirkcudbright Artist Collection. Particularly pleasing to know that the Council has been recognised for its Kirkcudbright Artist Collection. Recognition from Museums Galleries Scotland clearly demonstrates that the collection is of national significance. And Harry Thompson is here to present the report. Harry?
I have with me Anne Ramsbottom, who's Museums Curator West. Not much to add to the report other than to say at 3.4 we reference the archaeology collection, and I'm happy to advise that yesterday we were advised by Museums and Galleries Scotland that that collection has retained its recognition status as well. But happy to take any questions.
Much. Any questions? Patsy?
So could you just expand on that last little bit of information, Harry, please?
Yes, the report in front of you deals with the award of recognition status to the Kirkcudbright Artist Collection. And as advised at 3.4, there are already 2 collections which have recognition status, the Robert Burns Collection and the Dumfries and Galloway Archaeology Collection. So they are subject to periodic review, and yesterday we were advised that the Archaeology Collection has been reviewed and has retained its recognition status.
So just on the back of that, slightly sugary nail, the Galloway Hoard, Viking Hoard, how are we progressing with that?
The short answer is that it's very slow. We are still awaiting an announcement from Scottish Government on the formal announcement of the discovery of the hoard. Everybody knows it's there, but we still await that formal announcement, and anticipated early summer, which would detail. That would announce the discovery of the trove, and from there would be further assessment and valuation of the trove, and that's where the work of the council would really start in terms of the engagement previously agreed in July last year.
I just ask what, as a council, we have done to show that we are, we want the ownership of this, we want it brought back to the region, and we want it exhibited in Kirkcudbright when we get the art gallery up and running. Because I don't want anybody in central Scotland, Edinburgh particularly, to think that we are not particularly bothered about this. And I don't know whether we're doing our lobbying, and I think we need to do it before we get a decision, if you know what I mean.
I don't think anybody will be in any doubt that the position of the council that it wants to have the hoard come back to Dumfries and Galloway. I can bring a report forward to the next meeting of this committee to detail the work that's been done and any outstanding work required and the future anticipated timescales. But certainly the regional archaeologist has been quite significantly involved in discussions so far. But I'll certainly bring, if the committee is minded, bring a report back to the May committee.
Okay, members happy to agree that? Okay, Jane?
Yes. Could that report encompass I think, the strategic political framework whereby people do actually display things which are discovered locally and what generally is expected to happen? I think that this council needs to have some absolute direct input into forcing the hand of people who have control over this. And if we simply sit back without having a programme to deliver this into our hands in some shape or form, it won't happen. I'm afraid it won't happen in the way that we want it to happen. So I think we should be in
Well, I think we're going to get that. I think we're going to get that report, and we're actually here to recognise the good news about the arts side, without getting back into the other aspect. So the member's happy to accept the report. Andy?
Yeah, could you ask, when you do, just through you, Chair, when Harry does his report for the next committee, can we just get an update on if there's any external claim that been placed in this, given it was pinched for somebody else in the first place, right? So it might not necessarily be ours. And that it was recognised in the first report that were brought forward by the archaeology people, yep.
Well, I think there's laws about that. I don't think, unless there's some very ancient Viking hanging about somewhere, I don't think there's anybody alive got a claim.
Well, it's who the Vikings stole it from, Chair, I'm getting at.
Anyway,
right, okay.
Move on to item 8, which is COSLA Award Beat the Street Initiative. Along with other members, I would like to see the considered public support for Beat the Street initiatives, which were held in Annan and Dalbeattie. No doubt the relevant ward members will wish to comment on this groundbreaking initiative. To receive national recognition for our work in tackling inequalities and improving health is a great achievement and a great credit to the staff and the local people who made it possible. So far, the Beat the Streets initiative received a bronze and silver award through the COSLA Excellence Scheme, and I'm sure to speak for all members when I say that we're rooting for you when the gold award winners are announced later this year. And Stuart Hamilton's here to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. There's nothing further to add to the introduction that's been placed there by the Chairman, but I'm happy to take any questions on the project.
The participants in Dalbeattie who took part in it, I think it's actually brilliant to see it. 39% of the population on and 37 Dalbeattie took part. And what really amazed me was that you had grandparents out with their kids in prams about 6 months, and it got the community spirit going well. And we're following up something in Dalbeattie, I think, for the 16th to the 21st of March through suing them and beat the street again, like. But it's not got to be in as big a long a scale. But I just say both teams should take great credit for what they participated in.
Thank you very much. Members happy to accept the report? Oh, sorry, Finlay.
I just wonder if it's worth investigating this on an ongoing basis. I know there's a high cost involved in the equipment, but it's been so successful, and I know we're running it again in Dalbeattie. I just wonder whether we should explore options on having something within Dumfries and Galloway that we can roll out ourselves rather than relying on a third party when it's been so successful.
Thank you. In terms of the follow-on programme that's running, starts next week in Annan and Dalbeattie, that's a very small-scale project, just on the back of the success of the longer-term project. There has been discussions between officers within Community and Customer Services and Economy, Environment and Infrastructure on physical activity and active travel. And we are awaiting the next round of the Smarter Choices, Smarter Places funding being announced by the Scottish Government, and do plan to place an application for further funding for opportunities to roll out a programme across the region. There has been some work undertaken in the key communities on the back of the success of Beat the Street in terms of engaging the volunteers that supported Beat the Street, and they are now participating in community-led fun walks in Annan, and there has been a successful initiative in the forest in Dalbeattie. And we're engaged at local level with partnerships who have physical activity theme amongst their partnerships. And there's activity between health and wellbeing specialists to try and nurture initiatives that can support physical activity and active travel at a local level. The success of Beat the Street is a tried and tested activity, and the resource from Intelligent Health certainly demonstrated its success locally in Dumfries and Galloway. It's now being rolled out in North Lanarkshire, and Glasgow City Council are looking at it. There's no other technology out there at present that we're able to tap into that is less expensive, but we're certainly monitoring opportunities.
Okay, members happy with that? Thanks very much, Stuart. Move on to item 9, which is Community Facilities Review. As we discussed earlier on the agenda, we need to be fully behind supporting communities making the most of their local assets. We have now got the end in sight with 25 of 29 community facilities successfully completing the process. We'll hear today about progress as we consider the current position for 4 communities that are getting closer to the finishing line. For members' information, we also advise you I've asked the Director to bring a report to our next meeting, which will give us options on how we can apply the lessons learned from the community facilities review to date, with a view to extending this to the remaining 39 community facilities that are still under council control. And Harry Thompson and Karen Brownlee are here to present the report. Harry?
Thanks, Chair. Just very briefly, members obviously considered the early item 5 in terms of transfer of, which covered in part transfer of community facilities and the difficulties involved in it. And the report updates on the transfer of the first tranche of 29 community facilities and outlines the reduction now to 4 remaining with an outstanding budget pressure of 20,000 or thereabouts. Members, sorry, as I say, so that's leaving a budget pressure of 20,000, which we're recommending that communities be asked to bring forward and implement proposals for those facilities by the end of June, moving back slightly from the previous scheduled target of the end of May, but obviously recognising that there is pressure to achieve that final transfer, and not least the budget pressure there. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
I just want to congratulate, I know I did it the last meeting, I want to congratulate the team on getting these pushed through. The negotiations in some instances I know have been very protracted and difficult, and I don't know how you've got any hair left, to be honest, so congratulations on getting the likes of New Galloway and Glenlocker sorted out. I know that it hasn't been a smooth road.
Jane?
Actually, just going to say exactly the same thing. I think you should have a T-shirt saying "I survived facilities review" or something like that.
Are members happy to accept the recommendations 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4? Thank you. Moving on to item 10, Community Councils across Dumfries and Galloway. This report provides members an update on the current position with community councils in Dumfries and Galloway. I would also advise members that recommendation 10.2 should be slightly extended with the following insertion at the end. Acknowledging that any amendments to the scheme can only be made following a process of consultation as required by Section 53 of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Ideally, we are just being asked to make a recommendation to full council. Harry's here, along with Kirsty. Anything you want to add to the report?
Thanks, Chair. Just very briefly again, a report was brought to advise members of an issue with respect to Community Council's adoption of constitutions. The requirement to do so and the sanction of dissolution was introduced under the new scheme of establishment in 2014, following a periodical review. Whilst it's a reasonable expectation for a Community Council to have formally adopted a constitution, there's clearly an issue when such a large number have not done so. And the requirement for a Community Council to dissolve after 3 months also clearly sets a challenge in terms of resource usage. Members will note that the staff teams involved in providing support for Community Council elections would also be heavily involved in the Scottish Parliament elections and the EU referendum this year, and that's in terms of the value for money referred to within the report, that there would be real pressure on council resources as well as the resources of the community in terms of participating in further elections. Happy to take any questions.
Gail?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure what the EU and the referendum had to do with elections that were in October 2015, but anyway, it was just the list at the back on page 177. Is it fully up to date now? Because Lockerbie dissolved, disestablished, sorry, they didn't dissolve, disestablished. They've now re-established. And they had their first meeting in January, they had an EGM in February and have adopted a constitution. So I'm not entirely sure that this list is up to date.
Chair, the number has now reduced to 34 outstanding, but it's still a significant number.
I think difficult arises that what he stated was they had to adopt their standing orders within 3 months of the election. That's what he stated. So they were out with that 3-month period. That's just established. Were they different from the rest?
Generally, I agree with the whole sentiment, the whole thing here. I'm having difficulty coming to terms with the term conditional dissolution, because a dissolution clause tends to be absolute. And so how can we have a conditional dissolution clause?
We can't make a decision here today. We're being asked to make a recommendation to the full council. The problems come about. We've got to differentiate between what the law says and what we said. It's us elected members that put that bit in. Because we had a couple of seminars on the community council setup, and there's new guidelines came in from the Scottish Government. That's the law of the land at the end of the day. There are statutory things that you've got to do with community councils. It was ourselves on advice put in that we had to have this 3-month rule or they would be dissolved. Now, I think some of them are now, most of them are now up and running. Some of them took a wee while for officers and along with the elected members to get re-established again. And the last thing I think we want to do is to go and dissolve every community council across this region, hold new elections, because there are two things involved here. There is the cost of advertising in every newspaper across the region. There's a staff time involved, and I think there's a need to take a pragmatic and common sense approach to this. To date, I believe there's been one objection from one individual. Now, at the end of the day, that is one we can deal with. There is nobody here in breach of the law, either at officer level or at elected level. We're the ones who put this particular clause in when we reviewed this. Perhaps you should ask the question, is this absolutely necessary? So, since we put it there, we can take it away. All I'm asking for today is for members to accept the recommendation here as amended, be put to full council, and a bit of common sense applied by this council, instead of bringing ourselves into disrepute by incurring unnecessary expenditure and absolutely probably brassing off a lot of decent folk who serve in community councils. Councillor Thompson?
Thanks. Do we need to discuss or have any sight on what those conditions might be for dissolution, or is it pretty arbitrary once we agree this?
So I'm not sure I understood the question from Councillor Thompson.
Okay, so if you have a conditional dissolution, that suggests there are conditions that must be met before you would have a dissolution. So it's really just to tease out, or is that something for full council to decide, or how do you determine then when to dissolve if it's appropriate?
I think the issue is that the current requirement is an absolute requirement to dissolve, as opposed to a conditional one. And I think there needs the recommendation would be that the council explores the option, or certainly this committee recommends to the council that it looks at the option of conditional dissolution rather than an absolute requirement to do so. Given that it's a very firm three-month deadline there, and on the face of it, under the current scheme, the requirement is for the council to dissolve itself.
Gail?
Just one little point, and I think it's quite an important one. Those who haven't returned their constitutions yet and had them signed off by both parties, should they be put into sort of temporary suspension just now, particularly in relation to planning matters, because they're statutory consultees. And I wouldn't like to see a community council put in an objection prior to this full council meeting against a planning application, and the applicant getting wind of the fact that they're not a constituted body. Will that leave them open to problems? You're shaking your head, but if I was an applicant and I found out that a community council wasn't fully constituted under our specifications, I would not be a happy applicant.
Chair, we're still awaiting external legal advice on the position of the community councils, but we certainly, I think, it would be advisable for us to communicate with those community councils who have not yet agreed their constitution and advise them of the potential implications.
And there's absolutely nothing to stop the community councils to put an objection in, as perhaps pointed out, a wee bit of a problem at the moment. There's absolutely nothing to stop the committee itself, the planning committee itself, agreeing to hear from them. But I think we've got to get this problem sorted out, and it can only be sorted out by going to full council. There's no point in talking around the trees today. Nothing can be solved here today. We must put it to full council as amended. Andy?
I was just going to agree entirely with what you've just said there, Chair, and I'd be happy if I've got your assurance and Harry's assurance that it'll all be covered in the report to full council, and that kills it today, and let's move on.
I mean, ask for this report to come here today, because this has been lurking about in the background for a wee while now, and it could probably been solved a wee bit easier, but we've got to be careful what we do. Okay, are members happy to accept the recommendation as amended? Okay, thank you very much. Councillor McClung?
Yeah, Chair, I'm quite happy to accept the new recommendation, but can we a copy of the extra wording that we put in? But when listening to it, I'm perfectly happy with it.
Yep, you'll get that. Okay, members happy with that? I have no further business. Can I thank you all for your attendance?